Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another round of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT4 Championship for 2022. And tonight marks round number 3 of the 9-round calendar, and we are here at the Japanese circuit, known only as Suzuka International Racecourse, for what is expected to be a very close and tightly packed round of racing, given the fact that today we are marking the conclusion of the F1 stage of the championship calendar. Indeed, the initial prizes in this series will be up for grabs after the racing tonight, and so our drivers will be given it their all in order to bring home the early prizes and continue to build that championship momentum. Now, of course, this broadcast is effectively a post-race broadcast, with the racing having occurred earlier this week. It occurred on Wednesday, the 8th of June 2022, but we're bringing you all as if it were live on Friday, the 10th of June today. So as a result, as your commentator and host, I do not know who's going to be the winner. I don't know how it all plays out on circuit, so it'll be the rawest possible live experience you can have, minus some brief technical limitations with regards to the replay file that we use. And of course, this series brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform, known only as iRacing, available on PC. But our schedule for tonight is a rather simplified schedule, because tonight is our first feature race round, and that means you can see at the times there, British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1, we only have one item on the agenda, and that is the one and only 45-minute feature race, which will be kicking off in just under 14 minutes. And it'll be all in from start to finish for our drivers to be able to get the maximum possible points, albeit with a mandatory pit stop. And we'll talk a little bit more about how the grid is exactly going to be set when we come onto the rules and regulations. Now, in the commentary box, you have myself. My name is Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you this broadcast live tonight on 2 media platforms. Firstly, if you are on YouTube, you could go to my channel on YouTube, that is TX141TX, where it's also labelled as Paul Walsh. Alternatively, if you are on Twitch, you go to twitch.tv/TX141, and that's where you'll find this broadcast live on Twitch tonight. But without further ado, we should go from talking about the schedule and whatnot to talking about the season ahead. Because remember, it is round number 3 today, but we have had some rounds already and we've got plenty ahead of us. So, last time out, we were, of course, at the Red Bull Ring, and that was a week ago in Brazil, and, well, no, not in Brazil, my apologies, we're jumping a bit back ahead of ourselves. That was in Austria last time out, and it was all about being smart with the draft and beating one another on the brakes into those heavy braking zones. So quite a bit of drama on the final laps, particularly in the Pro class, where we saw a number of drivers get it wrong at the very last moment, a shake-up in the results, and then we were proceeding that with the season opener at Interlagos in Brazil, and that was all the way back on the 25th of May. And as you can see, the F1 stage marking the first 3 rounds, and that based on the fact that the 3 circuits of which the opening 3 rounds take place are all the most commonly featured Formula 1 circuits on the Formula 1 calendar. So Interlagos, Red Bull Ring, and Suzuka. And of course, we picked Suzuka for the 3rd and final round of the F1 stage for the simple reason, what a better circuit, what more notorious circuit to crown champions at. Indeed, we've got many a case, such as Damon Hill being crowned at Formula 1 champion back in, if I remember correctly, the year 1995 or 1996, one of the 2 of them, with Murray Walker's infamous "There's a tear in my eye" as my dear friend Damon Hill goes across the finish line to take the championship. Of course, we had the massive square up between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, the 2 teammates breaking the way down into the Casio Triangle chicane, which ended up concluding the championship in favour of Alain Prost in one year, and then the year after it went Senna's way after the 2 of them came to blows going into turn 1 right at the start of the race. Now, we're hoping not for that contact, we're hoping for something a little bit more, less contact heavy and more memorable, such as like Damon Hill taking his championship, but it is the case. We're expecting the race to be fast and furious tonight. After which we'll be taking a week's break before returning with the America stage. And round 4 will be taking place at Road America, and that will be on 22nd of June, and the live broadcast itself will be on the 24th of June, so 2 days after. And the America stage, named after the fact that all 3 circuits are based in the United States of America, with the fact that we do have Road America followed up by Watkins Glen, and then Daytona Road Course, which brings that stage of the season to a close, and that will be on the 6th of July, the race itself, but we'll be reading the broadcast as if it were live, if I remember correctly, on what will be the 11th of July, although don't quote me on that. And as for stage 3, there'll be another week's break for the American stage, and then we head to the Endurances stage. And these 3 circuits are the circuits you most commonly see on an Endurance Series calendar. So whether it be on, say, the Fanatec GT4 Endurance stage or other series, we've got Mount Panorama, followed by Spa-Francorchamps, and then the Nürburgring and Nordschleife circuit, and we'll be bringing the season to a close officially on the 3rd of August 2022, but we'll be bringing the post-race broadcast shortly after that. And that's when we bring this series, the curtain down, and we crown our champions, and indeed our winners who get entered into that Race of Champions later this year. But that's enough about the season ahead. We've got to get through each individual race, and indeed our drivers will need to do the same. And well, speaking of getting through each of the individual races, it is the case that as we look to the Pro Class standings right now, we can see there right at the top of the Pro Class by only a single point is Austin Farr. And it is the case that Austin Farr, after that difficult end to the Red Bull Ring race, seeing that advantage cut, Jerome Bajulaz now closing that gap to only within a point. But do not count out third place man Edwin Onofre there on 36 points. So really it is a three-way fight for the title of the Formula 1 stage champion in the Pro Class. Although we can also consider John Lauzon there. Do not count him out, given the fact he was showing brilliant pace at the Red Bull Ring, albeit it was the case that a limited fuel tank, due to a little bit of a mix-up with regards to the fuel loads our drivers were taking into the race, meant that Lauzon had to lose out some considerable pace towards the end, and he was a third favourite to potentially be looking to take the win at the circuit, but he'll be looking to bounce back tonight. A further 3 points behind in P5, both John Wilding and Jordan Butler. And Butler as well looking absolutely sensational at the Red Bull Ring until the fuel became a problem as well. And we're expecting great things from Butler, with Henry Morse only 2 points behind on 27 points. Now, 5-point gap to Rocco Ravaf, who last time out made his debut in the series with a great performance at the Red Bull Ring, and we're expecting plenty more tonight. He is 1 point ahead of Sam Van Olst, and unranked so far as they've yet to participate, Daniel Downing and Tanner Dibble. Now, we didn't talk about the instant count points last time out, given the fact that we'd only had 1 round of racing, but now we're 2 rounds in. We can start to talk about the instant counts, because remember, there is a prize up for grabs for the driver with the least amount of instant points over the course of the series, and we can see there it is the case that Rocco Ravaf currently leading the way after 1 race that he's entered on 5 points, where our drivers have to take part in at least 8 rounds to be able to be eligible for the Instant Count Championship, and he's on 5 at the moment. He is the best part of 4 ahead of Sam Van Olst, but it is the case of the Pro Championship. A lot of our drivers picking up some quite considerable Instant Count points, and particularly there, Jordan Butler on 37. He's been in the wars, and indeed quite instant prone, it would seem, and he'll be looking to try and arrest that form and bring it down tonight and make sure he doesn't run away in the Instant Count compared to his peers, because you can see in that midfield there, we do have the likes of Jerome Bajulaz, also we have John Wilding and John Lauzon, and they'll be looking to try and minimise the number of points they pick up today so they can get a bit closer to the cleaner drivers. Cleaner in terms of instant points, not in terms of driving attitudes, such as Austin Farr and Henry Morse and Edwin Onofre. But as we now make our way to the AM class standings, it is the case that we can see the picture here is a little bit different, where Jermaine Warren, after 2 dominant rounds, is leading on 56 points, 20 clear of Duncan Moraes there in P2. And really the question is, given that Jermaine Warren is pretty much a dead certain to be taking home that championship crown with regards to the F1 stage, assuming that he does attend today, will anybody be able to close the gap in the wider Drivers' Championship? Because keep in mind that all these points are in reference to the Drivers' Championship as well as the F1 stage, given that we are in the opening stage of the season. Duncan Moraes only 20 points behind. It is the case that Fernando Takahashi 1 point off and Lee Porter a further 3 points off. It is the case second through to fourth. All 3 drivers there will be looking to close that deficit to Warren as soon as humanly possible. And in fact, looking at my board, it is the case I think Jermaine Warren may not be in attendance tonight, and if so, well, that is going to be a little bit of a surprise, because he will not be picking up any points for this round, and if he does not pick up any points and Duncan Moraes is able to pick up the win, well, that could mean that Jermaine Warren actually misses out on the F1 stage crown, and that would be a twist in the town. Duncan Moraes will take inspiration for that, there's no doubt. Meanwhile, we can see P5 there, Mark Senegal, 3 points off of Lee Porter, and continue to build that form in the McLaren, with Kenny B. Smith there in P6 on 28 points, and a further 2 points back, Rodney Felker ahead of Justin Bragan and Roger Ganesh there. Both in P8, Bragan and Ganesh on 21 points, and looking to close the gap to the top 5. Along the way back, 7 points off, but he'll be looking to close up as well. Craig Parks in P10, and he took part last time out, of course, and we look forward to seeing him out on the circuit again in the near future. Unranked, they've yet to take part in a round. We have Albert Brand and also Stefan Chalafou, and I do believe that we're going to be seeing Chalafou take to the circuit tonight in his debut round of this series, which is great news indeed. But the story's a little bit different on the instant count perspective, however. We can see there it is the case that quite low numbers within the AM class compared to the pros, and our lowest there on what is 4 points is Fernando Takahashi, the BMW M4 driver, who's been driving very safely so far and making that BMW work in the races to his advantage, but he's only 1 ahead of Roger Ganesh there, who's on 5, and then Craig Parks on 7, only 1 ahead of Jermaine Warren. And well, Kenny B. Smith, we even jumped over him. He's right in the middle of all that on 6 points. And then we do have a sizable jump to both both Lee Porter and Mark Senegal on 16 apiece, with 19 to Duncan Moraes, and then Rodney Felker last at the moment in the instant count wars with regards to 20 points, and he'll be looking to try and bring that number down or make sure it doesn't go up too much tonight. And indeed, quite a few instant points up for grabs here at Suzuka due to the fact it's very easy to go wide and pick up and off track, and it's also quite easy when you're battling side by side to rub against another driver, given how tight this circuit can be. But as we come over to our team standings, it is the case that whilst there's no prizes up for grabs in the team standings, there's a bit of pride on the line, and it's Goldwing Motorsports who lead by only a single point ahead of MOP or Middle of the Pack Racing, 92 points to them, and then we have a 22-point gap to Blue Flag Motorsports, who are leading the way, best of the rest there. They are 12 points clear of DNA Racing, who are 8 points ahead of Sunday GT Turtles in turn. Ascension Racing, Delta Motorsports and Motors Racing completed the standings there, and all of our teams accounted for after 2 rounds. And as we come from the championship standings to now the circuit, we are here today at the Suzuka International Racing Course, located near the town of Suzuka in the Mie Prefecture of Japan. This circuit, one of only 2 FIA graded listed, so that means they're eligible for Formula 1 and FIA events. FIA graded circuits featuring a figure of 8 layout, and it is the case that the latter half of the lap goes over the top of the earlier portion of the lap, and consisting of what is 17 corners here. This circuit is notorious for producing close racing, with the first 2 sectors being focused on handling and the latter 2 sectors being focused on what is outright acceleration and also heavy braking. And I feel that this image map provided us by simracingwiki.com, to whom we're very grateful to, does not tell you the full story of what it means to drive a lap around the Suzuka circuit, and we'll definitely give you that perspective as we do go racing in approximately 4 minutes time. But as for our rules for going tonight, we have to introduce our rule set for the feature race rounds. Of course, every 3 rounds is a feature race. It is the case that in terms of setup, much like the opening 2 rounds, our drivers shall be running the iRacing baseline setup, and they'll run that for all races. And car fuel loads have been restricted to 50%. They were 32% last time out, but now we have clarification. They will be 50% for this round and for all further rounds, and that was due to the fuel mix-up at the Red Bull Ring, which cost the McLaren drivers in particular quite considerably in terms of outright pace as the race went on in the sprint. In the feature race, the grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the Drivers' Championship standings following the previous round. So Championship leaders will be at the back of their respective class, and meanwhile the driver placed last but having some points will be placed at the front. And the Pro class shall start ahead of the AM class with an approximate separation of a 5-second gap. Drivers have yet to score championship points, so if they're making their debut tonight, will start at the back of their respective class, and this is to, of course, avoid them getting an unfair advantage. The race will start at the manual double-file rolling start, with the formation being held up to the start-finish line, after which drivers go racing. Each driver will have 2 fast repairs available, rather than just the common one. It is the case because we've got double the race time duration. We're going to have 2 fast repairs available. A driver shall receive a drive fuel penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points, and there is a mandatory pit stop in which drivers must take on fuel. They don't have to change tyres, but they must take on fuel in that pit stop, otherwise they will be parched in terms of their fuel tank before they can get to the end of the race. Well, I think that's enough about rules and regulations. I know what you're all here for. We're here to see racing, and we go back to our live pictures now, as it is the case our drivers are in their final moments of this warm-up session here, just getting themselves set. 2 minutes on the clock to go before we go racing, setting that grid. And we can see right now Pro Championship leader Austin Farr for Goldwing Motorsports here, only a point ahead of his rival in the Porsche, Bajulaz. And well, Austin Farr will be looking to try and bring it home tonight, and it will be the case that after a difficult day at the Red Bull Ring, he will not want to lose out on what is the first minor crown in this series, given the fact that it's the overall Drivers' Championship, but he will want every possible win he can get in order to build up that momentum. He's a very fast driver in the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage GT4, and we'll be waiting to see whether he can pull it off. He's the fastest in this final warm-up session, there's no doubt about that, but being fast in the warm-up session and being fast in the race are 2 very different things when you have to manage the car over 45 minutes as he makes his way through the S's. And we can see his rival here, Jerome Bajulaz, in the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. And the car really struggled last time out the Red Bull Ring. It didn't have the pace of the straights. This is a handling-focused car, and we're expecting that Bajulaz and Blue Flag Motorsports will be absolutely dominant in the opening 2 sectors, but in the latter half of the lap where he will start to feel the pinch of the Porsche's straight line speed, and that balance of performance between the cars, of course, balancing them out over the course of the circuit. And Suzuka, one of those circuits where balance of performance is really demonstrated, because each sector tests a different aspect of the car. So each car here featured today, whether it be the McLaren, the BMW GT4 or alternatively the Porsche, it will be the case that all three of them will be tested to their utmost, and as they make the way on around right now, not long to go indeed. We also have had the recent arrival of the Mercedes-AMG GT4, and we are going to be looking at integrating that car into the series as of round 4 onwards, and when we return for the Americas stage, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I think some drivers are already eyeing up that possibility of making the switch. And well, we talked about Stefan Chalafu. We can see here the McLaren driver making his way out of what is the hairpin there, the very tricky hairpin, before rolling his way all the way down towards Spook Curve. And Chalafu on his debut in that McLaren 570S will be looking to get off to a good start. We know a very consistent driver, not the fastest necessarily, but knows how to balance the car. And well, can the number 219 driver pull off a good result tonight as we get the transition to set the grid? And whilst we're waiting for the grid to be set, we say hello in the YouTube chat there to Edwin Onofre. We also say hello to Duncan Rays there, and to all of you guys and girls tuning in. Of course, it is Friday today, so I hope you're all doing well and set for a great weekend ahead, and hopefully this racing will get you a little bit closer to the weekend. And well, if you've got any major plans, do let me know what you've got planned for the weekend, as we are now waiting for that grid to be finalised. We can't walk you through the grid order, unfortunately, due to limitations of the iRacing replay file that we're using, but we will give you that quick summary of how the grid lines up once all our drivers are set. It does seem as though we've got quite a limited grid today, only 13 drivers taken to the field with 6 pros and 7 AMs, but whilst we may be limited in volume, it is the case that the quality will outmatch the quantity, and we're expecting some fantastic side-by-side battling here at the Japanese circuit, and it's only moments away now as we are just waiting for our last couple of drivers to get into place. And as you can see from the blimp camera here, as all our drivers do take to the grid, it is the case that the majority of our cars, being the Aston Martins alternatively, and the McLarens, but we do have a couple of BMWs in there and also one Porsche. But Jerome Bajulaz not making it to the grid by the looks of things there, I'm noticing. So he's going to be starting from the pit lane, unless that's a technical issue, but he's not gridded Bajulaz, so that is a disaster already. And well, that is going to put the momentum firmly on Austin Farr to potentially run away with proceedings, as we see line up on pole is Henry Morse with Sam Van Olst alongside him in P2, the Goldwing Motorsports drivers side by side, and then we've got John Lowes on at P3 for Blue Flag Motorsports with what is their Edwin Onofre alongside it in P4, Austin Farr P5, and his lonesome P5. Then Rodney Felker on pole for the AM drivers, with Justin Braggan alongside Mark Senegal on what is P8 overall. That's P3 in the AM class, alongside, in fact P4 it is there, P9 Lee Porter alongside, and then we do have Fernando Takahashi, Duncan Rays, and then Stefan Chalafu at the back of the AMs, getting ready to go race at the privateer. We're looking to try and get some good points to the board, but we look to the front of the field now, as it is for the combination of Henry Morse and Sam Van Olst to take us racing for 45 minutes of racing action here at Suzuka. And it's lights out, away we go. As you can see immediately, Sam Van Olst getting the jump there on Henry Morse as they make their way down towards turns 1 and 2. It's a difficult turn 1 corner they go. John Lowes on up the inside here, covering off Edwin Onofre nice and early, making sure that the Aston Martin driver can't get a move, and he goes a bit deep, and Austin Farr comes on through. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we see here in the AM class, Justin Braggan getting a good start there for MOP Racing, as behind Mark Senegal loses the rear there, just on cold tyres. The rear snapping around that McLaren, very sensitive when the tyres are cold, and he drops the position, but meanwhile, everybody else making it through safely as they all head on around. And I'm hearing the Jerome Bajulaz, they're trying to get the car fixed in the pit lane, and hopefully they can get that Porsche back out of the circuit as a bit of damage limitation. But the longer it takes, of course, the longer he's out the race and falls down the order in terms of laps. As we do see here, the Goldwing Motorsports driver Duncan Rays, he's got up his inside. That's Fernando Takahashi trying to get his nose on in, but the BMW M4 driver just not able to find the space in order to go for the move as they make their way out of the S's and now into the Degners. Into Degner 1 they go here, and as they chop to the inside of the right hand of turn number 8, and now down into 9, heavy on the brakes they go. Duncan Rays going a little bit wide, the car's unsettled there, and the Aston Martin driver straight lines it on the exit curve of Degner 2, and you can see Fernando Takahashi coming all through, and meanwhile the inside there's Stefan Chalafu gains another place, or does he, as they break into the hairpin of turn 10, and well, there's no way that Rays is going to let this one go and let Chalafu have the inside, and indeed they stay as they were in a very near knuckle moment for Duncan Rays as the South African driver tries to hold off Chalafu as they make their way up towards Spoon Curve. And speaking of Spoon Curve, we can see here we've got Sam Van Olst still leading as we ride on board and look back from the gearbox of Van Olst as they head down towards 130R. And you can see there he's got a face full of Henry Morse in his rearview mirror. And as they make the way in the long run, it's V8 versus V8. And as they head up towards the corner, well, Van Olst is covering it off very well as they head into left-hander here. Almost never. Oh, goodness me. And Van Olst, there's been multiple contacts there. And it looks as though in all of it, well, I think it's Van Olst who might have just tapped the brakes very slightly, and his teammate came to the back of him, and well, the rest of the drivers all stacked up. But the story of this is the case that now Edwin Onofre is your Pro Class leader at come the end of lap number 1. And well, we didn't expect it to happen like that, but we're hearing that Henry Morse has jumped to the pits with damage to the car. That fast repair will be used up, but he'll go a lap down, as meanwhile, Jerome Bajulaz has also just got the car out into the pit lane. They've almost got their Porsche repaired by the sounds of things, and it may be able to go racing in the near future, as where's Bajulaz? Well, right now he's making his way on down, but the Blue Flag Motorsports driver heading down the start for the straight. He is a lap down on the field, and this has not gone well for the Blue Flag Motorsports driver as he heads down towards turns 1 and 2. But after one lap, it is Edwin Onofre leading ahead of Austin Farr in P2, followed by Sam Van Olst in P3. Then we have the AM leader of Justin Bragg in P4 there, making his way through the S. He's being pursued by John Lauzon in P5. Lead forward to the second of our AM drives in P6, followed by Fernando Takahashi P7. Duncan Ray's in P8. Then Stefan Chalafoon P9, followed by Rodney Felker in P10. And then we have Mark Senegal P11. Those are the drivers on the lead lap, with Jerome Bajulaz at P12 and Henry Morse in the pit lane being repaired at the moment in P13 after that contact with Sam Van Olst, and also we believe Austin Farr and Edwin Onofre. In fact, all of our pro drivers been involved in that contact going into 130R. But what a crazy start to this race indeed, as I can see there Edwin Onofre is saying crazy start indeed, an absolutely crazy moment. And well, oh goodness me, and we have to cut away. That's Lee Porter who's gone for a turn at Degner 2, and you can see the skid marks there. That tells the story. The car just coming loose on the rear, he's having to let everyone go before he brings the car back onto circuit. Very respectful there, and that has cost him very dearly, but he hasn't dropped a lap or broken the car and had to take it to the pits, which is the most important thing. As meanwhile here, Justin Bragg letting John Lauzon come through, and John Lauzon really starting to spear his way back up the order after the incident to 130R. And we ride on board here with the McLaren 570S driver as he rolls his way out to Spoon Curve in hot pursuit. You can see the run he's got out of the corner, and in fact he's already looking for the move here. He's not even halfway down the old start finish straight for the West Course as they make their way in towards 130R. He covers it off, and it looks though Van Olst really struggling for top end speed. And I think the whack that Van Olst has had to the car has led to him losing out a bit of straight line speed as they make their way now up into Casio Triangle. That's turns 15, 16 and 17 for those who are numerical disposition. It's the case that, well, Van Olst is just losing out and going very, very slow indeed as they make their way around to complete what is lap number 2. And we've still got just over 40 minutes of racing to go here as our drivers press on. Now, as they make their way across the timeline, we are hearing that Austin Farr, currently the fastest man on the circuit, particularly in the Pro Class, and the fastest of everybody over the entirety of the lap. And here is Austin Farr as he makes his way through turn number 2, and he's in hot pursuit of where's Edwin Onofre as we ride on board with the Goldwing Motorsports Aston Martin driver. He's chasing after the Aston Martin of Onofre, and as they roll on through here, of course, in the S's, where it's a test about direction change and the balance of the car in that body roll capacity. The Aston Martin not as strong as the likes of, say, the Porsche or the McLaren, but still Farr looking much stronger compared to his adversary in terms of gaining that momentum through the S's as they made the way through turn number 7, now flat out all the way to turn number 8 and getting ready for the first of the 2 Degners. They both snap on the brakes about that 50-metre board, and you can see that Onofre going about 60 metres, Farr braking a little bit earlier to give the space. And as they roll through Degner 2 now, very tricky corner. Of course, you want to take the apex curve as aggressively as possible and rotate the car. And as they make the way out towards the turn 10 hairpin, Onofre go defensive. No, Farr backs off there. I think sensible 9. He's got the pace rest of the lap in order to go for that potential move. He doesn't need to send it into the hairpin. And as they make the way out of the turn 10 hairpin, now they roll their way all the way down to Spoon Curve. This long right-hand straight as they make their way down towards Spoon. It feels like it goes on forever, but I can assure you it does come to an end point as they make their way up towards turns at 12 and 13. Is that braking zone they go, and well, Austin Farr inching closer, but Spoon not really an overtaking opportunity. He has to wait, he has to be patient, and as they make their way on now, we're heading to Fernando Takahashi has just found his way past Sam Van Olst. The AM driver getting ahead of the pro. I do think Van Olst has got severe damage to the car, and it's costing him very dearly over the course, but he doesn't want to pick, he will then end up losing out more time if it's the second pit stop. But as they roll their way through 130R now, both drivers there right on the limit of adhesion, heading down towards Casio Triangle. Farr just not able to get close enough, braking as late as he can to close the gap to Onofre. But it does seem as though it's in sectors 1 and 2. That is where Farr is faster than Onofre. But as soon as they come towards the latter 2 sectors, as Farr there takes a bit too much exit curve, unsettling the car under power, and he loses out some time. You can see Onofre there responding with 2:12.025 versus Farr's 2:11.788. The two drivers are exchanging lap time. It is going the way of Farr, but I think Onofre's got something to say about it. Van Olst into the pits from what was at the time P7. He's decided he's got to come on in. The damage is too much to keep pushing on. But as Farr continues his pursuit here of the leader, Onofre doing a very good job. And to be fair, the one thing we do know about the Ascension Racing driver, he's not the fastest out there in the Pro class, but he's one of the most consistent and keeps himself out of trouble. And well, he's in a lot of trouble now as they come through 5 and into 6 here. And the very tricky downhill right-handers. You've got to set the car up nicely for 7. And you can see they're keeping it very, very compact. And Onofre driving that car, looking to get those direction changes mastered. But Austin Farr just seems to have a little bit more momentum as they roll their way in towards Degner 1. And as they do this time, well, where are those overtaking opportunities? We've got one at the hairpin if Farr's able to get close enough coming out of Degner 2, but it's not going to be easy because you've really got to have a run up into the hairpin to go for the move. And you can see Farr's there, he's about 3/10 back, but it's not enough to be able to send it. And Onofre will see it coming from a mile away if he does go for the send. But as they make the way out of the hairpin, meanwhile we can tell you that John Lauzon here in P3, well, oh goodness me, that McLaren looks like it's had a little bit of a bump on the front end, and that'll be from the contact down at 130. It looks like the front end's actually raised a bit more than it should be in terms of that front ride height, and I think that's where the bump has been pushed up. And you see Justin Bragg closing rather aggressively as they make their way up into Spoon Curve. Now Will, the AM driver here in the BMW, one of 2 BMW M4 drivers here today, both of them in the AM class. Oh goodness me, and John Lauzon there just taking a bit too much exit curve, coming out of the first part of Spoon at turn number 12 and running wide in as he dropped off the exit curve. The car simply came away from him, but meanwhile in the battle for the overall lead in the Pro class as well, Edwin Onofre on the outside. That's Austin Farr on the inside into 130R they go. And well, Onofre not offering too much of a defence there, but I think he's thinking a longer term about the whole 45 minutes of the race rather than just the opening 10 minutes. And quite a sensible approach there as they roll their way through Casio Triangle. Austin Farr is into the lead and right now looking to be well on his way to securing that F1 stage crown, subject to, of course, any stewarding post-race. And I think there might be a little bit of a steward's verdict hanging over that incident at 130R on the opening lap, which may mean we don't hear the F1 stage results until round number 4, ladies and gentlemen. We'll keep you peeled about that as soon as possible. But meanwhile, Austin Farr right now, he'll be focused on one thing, and that is get ahead of Edwin Onofre, which he's done, and now just put as much distance as he dares between him in case there's any sort of time penalty. I'm not saying that Austin Farr is at fault, but that's what you've got to think about as a driver. If you're involved in a major incident, you want to try and clear the rest of the field when you're the leader, just in case you do get a time penalty. And we've seen that time and time again. As meanwhile, we can see Duncan Moraes making his way past John Lauzon, who's really struggling right now, is the Pro driver, and the McLaren driver just all over the road in terms of that McLaren not looking settled. But as they roll their way down and around through turn at number 7, it is the case that Moraes right now chasing after Takahashi, a 1.3 second gap between himself and the second place man in the AM class. And as they head on up into where's the 2 Degners here, you can see how Duncan Moraes is able to just stay ahead of Lauzon. I think Lauzon will feel he's got the better pace of the 2 of them, but I don't think he's got the car under him to exploit that pace as they make their way all the way up towards the hairpin. Now as they do a little bit further back, I can tell you that Rodney Felker right now in the rather distinct orange-black liveried what is Aston Martin, the privateer here, closing up gradually to the back of Stefan Chalavu, and these 2 drivers have been exchanging lap time. It is the case that last lap, Felker was the best part of the whole second faster than Chalavu as they head on down and around, and as they make their way through 11 and in towards Spoon Corner of turns at 12 and 13. Right now I think Rodney Felker focusing as much as he can on putting those lap times in, because he's running good pace, and not quite the pace of the leaders in the AM class, i.e. the top 3, but definitely enough to go for that P4 position within the next couple of laps, should he be able to keep this rate of closure up as they make their way out of Spoon. Now as they make their way down the back straight here towards 130R, what have we got to look for? Well, I think in Felga's instance, he's going to lose a little bit here coming into 130. Obviously, he won't have that rotation that the McLaren has, but then it'll be under braking, and that's where we'll wait to see who's the bold on the brakes as Felga goes a little bit wide of the apex curve there. A very tricky corner 130R, because some drivers like to essentially use a snap downshift to turn their way into the corner, so they may be in 6th gear and then they downshift to 5th gear to rotate the car through. Other drivers will prefer to do a small dab of the brakes before rolling their way through the 130R corner. Personally, in my own experience as a bit of a sim racer, I prefer the former, which is a snap downshift rather than tapping the brakes, but other drivers may use a different approach. But as we see them making their way down towards turns 1 and 2, we can see right now Rodney Felga keeping that pursuit on, but Chalafu actually opening that gap up a little bit. And Chalafu, no, to his credit, that last lap, a 2:13.37 from the McLaren driver. Well, he's finding some momentum here, and it's showing, because right now he is building, and that pace is coming on through. And speaking of another driver who's gradually coming on through, he had a pit stop due to damage picked up on the opening lap. Here is Sam Benoist, who's just gone across the timeline and set a personal best of a 2:13.858, and now he's made his way past Lee Porter. He's now chasing down Bajulaz, who is the best part of 19.5 seconds up the road as they make the way on the round. And I do believe at this point, well, Bajulaz is registered as actually being 18 seconds off of the back of Mark Senegal. So it is the case that I think Bajulaz may have just started a bit further off of the lead lap. We're not actually sure what's happened there, but it does seem as though he's got himself back out on the circuit. Not a whole lap down unlike we previously thought, but the Porsche driver is pushing on all the same. And well, where is Bajulaz, I hear you ask? Well, our cameraman finds him as the Blue Flag Motorsports driver makes his way out of what is the S's and heads on through the Degners there, and it looks as though that rear wing has been completely removed from the back of that Porsche. Well, he's got the struts there that will hold the rear wing up, but the car itself is heavily damaged as we're in. Henry Morse has come in to the pit lane. I'm not sure what's going on with Henry Morse, unless it's the case they found another problem with the car as they make the way on around. Now as Bajulaz rolling on through, looking good at this time, going down towards turn number 12. And in terms of his pace, it is the case of a 2:13.72. He is pursuing Mark Senegal, the AM driver in front. But his closest rival in the Pro Class, John Lauzon, the best part of what is there, if we do a bit of quick math, approximately 25 seconds up the road. But speaking of up the road, here is Duncan Moraes right now, who is chasing after Fernando Takahashi and rolling his way down through turn number 17. He's got the pressure of John Lauzon behind, and this is not comfortable positioning here for the South African driver, because the AM driver will not want the Pro trying to come on through when he's chasing down an opponent in the AM class. But John Lauzon, of course, may have other ideas in mind. As we see Moraes down the inside, and he covers it off in the end. He is pursuing after Fernando Takahashi as they make the way into turn 1. Turns 1 and 2 being known as turn 1 on the circuit map itself, but we'll make sure it's very clear it's turns 1 and 2 for the purpose of your viewing pleasure. But as they make the way through the S's, turn 3, turn 4, Duncan Moraes right now looking to be losing out a little bit in his pursuit of Takahashi, and that BMW in front of him looking very composed here. It does look like a bit of a block, it must be said, in terms of its nature here. It looks like a brick trying to push its way through the air, the BMW M4, but a very sturdy car, and Takahashi demonstrating how sturdy it is in terms of base as he makes his way through the left-hander of turn number 7 and down towards 8 into Degners. And this is where the BMW stability and weight will really give it an advantage, because you can just roll the car. And Takahashi there, you can see how smooth it is coming through Degner 2 compared to the other cars. He's just got no worry about taking those curbs. And the thing about the curbs at Suzuka, particularly the apex curbs at the Degners and also at 130R, those apex curbs are deceivingly high. They are much higher than they look, and therefore when you run the car over the curbing, it can actually lead to you essentially grounding out the suspension or hitting what is known as the bump stop, and that will cause the suspension to over tighten, and therefore the car will just bounce off circuit. And I can tell you from experience on the set course of competition at another sim racing machine platform, it is the case when you hit the peak of the suspension around Suzuka, you're going to feel it. The car is going to be launched, and it is a horrible feeling. But right now Takahashi doing everything right here in his GT4 BMW to just stay ahead of Duncan Moraes as they make the way down towards 130R. Once again, we ride on board the gearbox, and you can see it's on the straights, but that Aston Martin absolutely flies by comparison. It's in the corners where Takahashi is able to abuse the stability of the M4. You can see that as they go through 130R, Takahashi taking some of the apex curve, Moraes avoiding that apex curve, and this is the difference in the body language of the two cars. And that BMW is made to abuse the curbs here at Suzuka, whereas the car behind is not, as they make the way on through. Oh, goodness me, Duncan Moraes almost accidentally there going into the pit lane through some snap oversteer on quarter exit, but just keeps it together. And meanwhile, I can tell you that further down the order, Rodney Felker has found his way past what is Stefan Chalavu. In fact, I think Chalavu has had an off track and is actually into the pit lane. So Chalavu into the pit lane with a broken rear wing. You can see that rear wing dangling off the rear of the car there, and that is unfortunate. I think the Privateers had a bit of a moment and has lost place. He's also lost the place to Mark Senegal before he came into the pits. And the Sunday GT Turtles driver now chasing down Rodney Felker after a difficult start, which saw him at this corner at turn number 2 go off circuit on cold tyres on the opening lap. Now, as they make the way on around, we do look to the YouTube chat and we say hello to Jermo there. I hope you're doing well, Jermo. And as they make the way on through the S's here, we have cleared 16 minutes of the race, but we've still got the best part of what is there, just over half an hour to go. And as they continue on around, we are waiting for those scheduled pit stops. And so far, the pit stops we have seen, I think, have been more driven by necessity in terms of damage to the car rather than actual strategic timing. Although we could say that the pit stops may start occurring around the 20-minute mark in terms of the undercuts. The overcuts going to approximately 27 to 30 minutes into the race. But as I try to continue the way on around, we do look to what is Senegal here still as we ride on board with the Sunday GT Turtles driver, who is closing up very rapidly in that McLaren 570 versus their Rodney Felker. And you can see through the hairpin, both drivers not quite getting the run through the hairpin that had line. It was the case of Felker going a bit overly deep under trail braking, Mark Senegal braking a bit too early and aggressively and actually stopping before the hairpin apex. A very tricky corner to turn 10 hairpin because of the way the apex is actually in a dip in the road. We'll come back to that later, as right now Senegal will show us how to go through spoon curve here rather smoothly as he rolls his way on through it, not using the full width of the circuit, which you don't have to be fair, in the transition from turn 12 to 13, given the fact that running wide there on that exit curve at turn 12, it's a deceptively dangerous curve in the fact that it actually runs down and slopes off circuit, which means, as we saw earlier what happened to, I think it was John Lauzon, who just went a little bit too wide and almost lost the rear of the car. It actually causes the car to snap oversteer into the corner. But meanwhile, as we see Senegal here giving that pursuit, not quite got the momentum of Felker through 130R, and that is where Felker is holding on right now. He's just able to carry a bit more speed through those medium to high speed apexes compared to Senegal, and I think it may be a little bit of a confidence factor as well. I'm not saying that Senegal's not confident behind the wheel, but in terms of how much speed he has the confidence to carry through the corner, and he'll want to keep that car safe, of course, because anything can happen over the course of a 45-minute race. It's not a sprint, it is a marathon by comparison. As John Lauzon into the pits here for what we believe is his scheduled stop. He's come on in and he'll also be doing some repair work to the car based on what we've seen so far. But as he's being serviced right now, we look from one pro driver in the pits to one pro driver who may be thinking about coming into the pits at some point in the near future, and that is the Goldwing Motorsports driver of Austin Farr here, leading currently at P1. And as he makes his way through the Degners once again into Degner 2, right now opening the gap of 4.2 seconds over Edwin Onofre. And in terms of lap times on each and every lap in the recent moments, it has been the case that Austin Farr has been opening that gap up anywhere between 4 tenths to 8 tenths. That last time out, it was a 2:11.4 for Austin Farr. Meanwhile, Edwin Onofre came in pursuit. It was a 2:12.2, and that shows you Farr really trying to put the distance between the two of them. But to be fair, I think the Ascension Racing driver here focusing more on just bringing home that second place and making sure he gets some huge points in the championship, and also avoiding the contact. He flashes his lights there. I think he knows that he's on camera, and as he makes his way down into a spoon curve right now, it is the case looking very composed, the two leaders. But meanwhile, in the AM battle, it is the case our AM leader here of Justin Brangan from MOP Racing making his way through spoon curve, and well, he has not put a foot wrong so far, looking very smooth and set up nicely in that BMW M4 as he makes his way down the west start finish straight, the back straight as we like to refer to it, and as he makes his way on up here in towards 130R, just pushing on in the MOP Racing machine. We only have had one retirement so far, and that is the retirement of Henry Morse. He had that damage to the car on the opening lap. They fixed it after he came into the pits, but it seems as though that damage has not been fully repaired and they've had to box the car and retire it. But Justin Brangan here looking very firmly in control of the AM class right now with a 4-second advantage, which is continuing to gradually expand as time goes on. But as he makes his way across that timeline, we are going to keep our eyes on the pro class battle lead, because Edwin Onofre is just at a 2:11.7 versus Austin Farr's at 2:11.5. I think Onofre is starting to get a feel for the car around Suzuka, and it is the case that he's starting to close that gap in terms of the pace to the leader. And will that gap turn in his favour later on? As we see coming into the pits, there's Mark Senegal coming in from what was P7 overall, P5 in the AM class, and as he makes his way on in, the Sunday GT Turtles driver, I would presume this is a scheduled stop here as we are nearing the halfway point, and now he's got to look. I assume it's going to only be fuel going in the car. He won't want to put new tyres on because they don't have jackets to tyres, which means they will go on cold. But we can see some of our pro drivers further down the order trying to recover their race now coming through. There's John Lauzon and just going underneath our camera, and our cameraman pans to him. Jerome Bajulaz there, the Blue Flag Motorsports driver here, recovering this race. He's doing a great job of recovering it so far. Currently running P3 in the pro class, P7 overall, and he is absolutely flying. Is the Blue Flag Motorsports driver. In terms of lap time, he's not quite there with Onofre or Farr. He's on the 212s, particularly the 212.7 last time around, and that was his fastest lap of this race so far. But he's definitely showing the pace needed to be P3 in the class, and well, it won't be enough, we believe, for him to secure the F1 Stage Championship. It'll be the case that it'll be Austin Farr who takes it, but Bajulaz is definitely making sure to limit the damage from today and stay right in the hunt for the Drivers' Championship as we go into the America stage in 2 weeks' time. As Bajulaz here rolling his way through the Degners, we can see it is the case. The Porsche looking very smooth in the opening two sectors. But as we now move into sector 3, this is where the Blue Flag Motorsports Porsche will start to struggle a little bit because it just does not have that acceleration or the straight line top end speed compared to its peers. But of course that goes with the territory. And we look from Bajulaz to what is Sam Van Olst down in P9 overall, at P5 in the pro class here, the last of our pro runners out on circuit. And he's trying to hunt down John Lauzon, the McLaren driver ahead of him. And well, we'll wait for the comparisons. Lauzon has just come out of the pits, to be fair, before we can start to compare their relative pace and lap times. But Van Olst here trying to fix what's gone wrong at the start of the race. As he makes his way here into Spoon Curve, down into turn 12 and into 13. Once again, it is the case, still a long way to go. We're only just about reached the halfway point, 22.5 minutes clear by the time Van Olst goes across what is the start-finish line of the West Grid. As you see him making his way across that line now, the start-finish straight for the west variant of the circuit, on the back straight here. And as he heads up towards 130R, well, Van Olst, I think, just simply trying to now bring the car home and not be involved in any more incidents as he heads through the tricky left-hander. But we do look from him to back up to Austin Farr, our leader, of course, overall in the pro class here. And in terms of those lap times, he is now being matched by Edwin Onofre. And I do wonder whether Austin Farr, in pushing as hard as he has taken a bit of life out of the tyres. Now he's having to back the car off a little bit in order to be able to feel comfortable in those tyres as we go deeper and deeper into this race. Because as we said earlier, over a 45-minute race, normally the tyres will last the distance for 45 minutes. We're not expecting tyre changes here, but you don't want to overpush, because the problem with pushing hard, as I think we're about to get an example, is this happens. And Rodney Felker, the AM driver here, was running P6 overall, P4 in the class. He's in the wall there. We can't exactly, I believe, looking at the car, I think it's the case that suspension has collapsed on the front left side. I think he's had a major shunt with the wall, and that's coming out of turn, well, it's turn at number 6 there, and he's jumped to the pits, and indeed that suspension has collapsed on the front left side, and he's had a major whack with the wall. And well, we can't go back and take a look at what exactly happened there for the time being, but what I can tell you as a result, that Bragan, Takahashi and Duncan Reyes, the top 3 in the AM class right now, I think will be, well, they'll be glad to hear that he's okay, that he's made it back to the pits, but at the same time they'll be glad they don't have that pressure from the Aston Martin driver in the battle for the podium. As we see Justin Bragan pressing on here with Takahashi behind. It is the case of Fernando Takahashi now starting to inch a little bit closer to Justin Bragan, as we see Takahashi in the rear of the camera shot as the privateer makes his way into 130R. That last lap, he gained 2 tenths on Bragan, both of them in the M4 BMW, and as they make their way up towards Casio this time, how will it turn out in terms of who gains on whom by the time they come to the end of what is their 11th tour of the circuit under race conditions? As we see Takahashi rolling his way on through, doesn't pull on in. Nobody pitting just yet. They're all trying to go a bit longer, I think, trying to extend that fuel tank as long as they dare. And Bragan a 2 at 12.4, Takahashi a 2 at 12.2. Another 2 tenths gain for Takahashi. I think he's now starting to bear down on the leader here. We've got a way to go. Of course, it could be the case that Bragan's doing some fuel saving to try and limit the time he spends in the pits, which is a valid thing to do when you're the leader and you've got an advantage of a few seconds. You can play around with that gap, exploit it a little bit to do some fuel saving, and therefore save yourself some time in the pits. But we will wait and see whether that is the case, or whether Takahashi has just stepped it up a gear and Bragan's having to step it down a gear as they roll the way on through. And speaking of rolling their way on through onto another lap, here is Jerome Bajulaz here, the Blue Flag Motorsports driver, who has just set another personal best at 2:12.389, and well, he is right now 28 seconds off of Duncan Reyes. He is really the best of the second half of the field, where the drivers have been involved in incidents of some description, or they've taken pit stops already. But it is the case that Bajulaz here pushing on as we have a bit of overcast cloud coming over the Suzuka circuit, and that just takes away a bit of the light. And in fact, that's quite a heavy cloud coming over. It's almost darkened things. It's almost as if somebody's put a filter on the cameras there, but I can assure you it is the case. Our cameramen are not being that overly creative today as Bajulaz continues to push on. As he rolls his way through the left-hand here at turn at number 7 with that damage on that missing rear wing by the looks of things. The Blue Flag Motorsports driver here, knowing that he's just got to keep winning those laps. It's like a time trial session right now, and he may be rewarded later by seeing some more opponents to pass. But as he rolls his way on down, we look to Mark Senegal here, who recently having taken his mandatory pit stop, he's cleared it. He has come back out behind Stefan Chalafou, and Sunday GT Turtles driver now chasing after Chalafou. Both of the McLaren drivers as they make their way in the battle for P4 in the AM class. Chalafou in that P4 position, weighs P9 overall. Senegal completely gets a good run there through Degner 1, really takes a good chunk of apex curve, goes a little bit deep into Degner 2 by comparison. I think carrying a bit too much momentum, but he'll know that he can really go through the Degners with a lot of speed, and he is closing up to Chalafou very gradually, just by a couple of hundredths a lap. He is pushing on as we see the lap times coming in for our race leaders, and Austin Farr open up his race lead to 5.1 seconds. Meanwhile, we hear Justin Bragan and Takahashi coming on through it, and Takahashi actually starting to drop off a little bit again from Justin Bragan after a difficult lap. But as Mark Senegal here makes his way into Spoon Curve, we have got Roddy Felker making his way out the pit lane after the repair work done to the car. The privateer now down to P12 overall, last of our runners on the circuit, P7 in the AM class, and for him now I think it's all about just getting the car to the end. He will have put the fuel in to go to the end most likely, given the fact he's been in the pit lane, and he's come out with 27 minutes complete, and we do a bit of quick mental maths, and that's 18 minutes still left on the board plus the final lap. And right now I think it will be one of the situations where Felker will just focus on seeing what he can do, because he is just over a minute behind Lee Porter, so there's no way he's going to close up now unless at the other driver's expense, but you never know what can happen over the distance as he makes his way up to speed. But as he does, we do look from one Aston Martin driver in the M class to another one, and that is Duncan Moraes here, the Goldwing Motorsports driver, who as he rolls his way down through Degner 2 is now starting to inch a bit closer to Fernando Takahashi. And we ride on board here with Duncan Moraes as he makes his way into the hairpin. As he comes on down there, setting the car very nicely as he comes through the hairpin. You can see how aggressive that gearbox is from second to third, just literally a quick shift with the extended third gear, and as he accelerates his way up through turn 11 towards Spoon Curve at 12 and 13. Well, that gap at the start of this lap was about 1.9 seconds. It's coming down rather rapidly. He is in the sector, of course, where the Aston Martin does outmatch the BMW in terms of that straight line speed and acceleration. And rolling his way through the second part of Spoon, and now heading down the back straight here. The gap was 1.6 seconds at the start of it. Will it become the end of it? Well, at the moment it's not really changed. He did have the best of runs through Spoon, to be fair. But sitting on turn 13, he got caught in that apex curve. Makes his way in towards 130R here. He has closed the 10th. He rolls his way coming down to 5th gear, and then he makes his way into the braking zone here. My goodness, he's just taken 4 or 5 attempts out to Takahashi. Takahashi had a really bad run, but by comparison, Duncan Moraes overstepping it under braking there into Casio, trying just out-braking himself with the amount of speed he carried into the hair, not into the hairpin, into the chicane, and that has cost him a little bit in terms of his closure. But right now, Duncan Moraes is flying. He's just at 211.995, whereas his peers in front of him on 212s as he makes his way down into the braking zone here for turns 1 and 2. Once again, trail braking into the very tricky right-hander of 2, whereby you've got to come all the way down the gearbox and get on the power really early, use the preload differential of the car to push you through the corner. And as he makes his way through 3 and 4 here, it is the case that the South African driver really trying to close up Takahashi before they have to take that pit stop. You can see he's literally throwing the car through the S's here, and well, he's keeping it composed, but at the same time, Takahashi no slouch by comparison. That BMW looking very firm. As Moraes makes his way over the curve, takes a bit too much curve there at turn number 7. He almost goes off right on the limit as the driver, as he makes his way down towards the Degners, but he's got to be on the limit now, because that is what Takahashi's driving at as well in the M4. These two giving it their all. They know that P2 is on the cards for either of them here, and right now it's the Goldwing Motorsports driver who is getting closer as they make their way up towards the hairpin. And Takahashi right now, I think he'll be wary of the fact that he does have a very fast charging Aston Martin behind. It's from Goldwing, and the privateer will be thinking about how can he hold off the Golden Tide as they make their way down for 11 and in towards 12. I think what he's got to do here, he's got to think about that pit stop and where he decides to place it. Keep in mind, of course, when he comes into the pit, he'll be to take on that fuel and he will lose a little bit of tyre temperature. So if he can outlast Duncan Race on circuit, then Fernando Takahashi will have that tyre temperature for a little bit longer and he won't have to get the tyres up to temperature for as long in that second stint, and that will be on his mind by comparison as they make the way here down towards 130R. Right now you can see that Aston Martin getting closer with each and every corner. It's now only 7/10 away and it is flying. It's in the tow as well. That will only mean it gets closer, assuming of course that we do have Duncan Race keeping it together, and he just about keeps it on circuit. Through 130R into the braking zone they go. Our race leader, overall leader and pro leader Austin Farr into the pit lane, and he's the first of our drivers to take that scheduled stop in the lead. And we can see Fernando Takahashi, and he's deciding to go for the undercut, and Duncan Race will now come on through to take P2 in the AM class. He is going long by comparison here with 14 minutes left on the clock as he heads across that timeline. And meanwhile we now look to Edwin Onofre, who finds himself in the rather unique position of leading his very first lap in this series as he makes his way through the S's. And when I say leads in his first lap, I mean his first lap in the lead rather than this is his very first lap in the series. Just to clarify on the English there, as it may be a little bit confusing, even going over in my head right now and thinking what did I just say, but it is the case that the Ascension Racing driver here in a bit of an uncommon position, but you'll be hoping this becomes a more common position as the championship season goes on. Leading, he will of course be relinquishing that position. We do believe that Austin Farr by the end of the pit stops, but you never know what can happen. It could be the case that there's a bit of a slow pit stop, but we do look to Austin Farr, who's come back out here, and well, he's nailed that pit stop absolutely perfectly. As the Goldwing Motorsports driver here comes back out P4 overall, P2 in the pro class. He's got a bit of traffic in front of him of Rodney Felker, but Felker will have the blue flags waved through to him and he will be expected to yield, and there it is. And Austin Farr there loses a little bit. He can't use the full exit of turn 7 given that Rodney Felker was essentially trailing on the outside of the corner exit, but Austin Farr won't lose more than a couple of attempts there in the grand scheme of things, and he did have a sizable advantage before the pit stop of just over 5 seconds, so I don't think that will hurt him too hard now as he tries to press on. And speaking of pressing on, here's Fernando Takahashi, who's come out in P7 overall, that's P3 in the AM class. Keeping in mind, of course, that Duncan Race was right behind him when he came into the pits. Moraes has stayed out, and he's got the traffic ahead of him on John Lauzon, but John Lauzon racing for position. And when I say traffic, I think that's a bit rude to call him traffic. He's a pro driver running in P6. He's already taken his pit stop as well. So John Lauzon here battling for position and trying to chase after what is Jerome Bajulaz as they make the way on around. Bajulaz is the best part of 4.5 seconds up the road. But we see here Fernando Takahashi pushing on, and as he does, will we see Onofre come into the pits this time? He does peel on in here, he takes the run into the pit lane. And what about elsewhere? Will we see Justin Bragan coming in from the lead of the AM class? He does, he takes a dip into the pits here, a nice quick run, and Duncan Race, will he come on in? Will he go one more lap? No, he comes on in. So I think this is as far as our drivers can take the car is in terms to the end of 15 laps. And well, where's Austin Farr? Here is our pro driver, second at the moment in class, but we're expecting him to retake the lead. Will it be as simple as that, or will it be close by the time they come on around? Well, it's the case that Austin Farr making his way on through. What about Onofre? Well, it is the case that the Ascension Racing driver is still being serviced, and as Austin Farr comes across the timing line, I think it's going to go the way of Austin Farr as he comes on through. He retakes the lead, and Onofre just leaving the pits now. I think it's the case that Austin Farr has got this one comfortably to check a flag, so long as he doesn't put a major foot wrong. Alternatively, can Edwin Onofre find a way to close down what is a huge margin of 8.6 seconds. That margin has opened up further since the pit stops. And what about the story between Moraes and Takahashi? Well, there is Duncan Moraes, and he's come out ahead of Takahashi, but he's stuck behind John Lauzon, and this could have major implications in the battle for P2 in the AM class come the finish, because we ride on board here with John Lauzon, who's running P4 overall, P3 in the pro class, and he will not want to fall backwards through the AM battle. He wants to stay ahead of these two drivers, and with Duncan Moraes right now, if he's got the pace, he's going to lose out here. He'll feel as though he's being held up, and that's Fernando Takahashi, who's not too far behind as all three drivers roll their way through turn number 7, and as they head now down towards turns 8 and 9 in towards the Degners once again. You can see Lauzon breaking away on the exit of 70, so they want to carry more momentum, but this is where we see Moraes in the Aston Martin close-up. He has that panache for what is the Degners, and as they roll away on through that Aston Martin, looking menacing, but the BMW is getting closer as well as they head into the braking zone for the hairpin. Now, as they do at this point, I mean, the argument could be, well, does John Lauzon need to be in front of these guys when he goes a little bit deep into the hairpin and Duncan Race takes a sniff up the inside? Well, it is the case that he's allowed to fight for track position versus the AMs as the pro. He doesn't have to give way, nor do the AMs have to give way to the pros as they're all on the lead lap. And I think Lauzon may be thinking about continuing to run this pace because right now he is 9 seconds off of Edwin Onofre. And in terms of lap times, he is going faster than Onofre by a considerable margin on a comparative lap. As they make their way around to the Blue Flag Motorsports driver, I don't think wants to give this one up, but that means that as they make their way out of Spoon Curve, Fernando Takahashi gets closer to the back of Duncan Race. And we ride on board here with the privateer in the BMW M4, and as they make their way down towards the braking zone, more of the lift and coastal, the slight dab of brakes under the 130R. You see they're both drivers, in fact, on the brakes very temporarily as they make their way up towards Casio Triangle, and Takahashi very well poised now to strike versus the Aston Martin as he rolls his way through Casio Triangle. And you can see just the confidence that Takahashi has to take those apex curves, but the Aston Martin breaking away in the acceleration zone there, particularly from first through to third gear. It just has a much more punchy gearbox, and as they make their way down towards turn one, Takahashi taking a little bit of a sniff to the inside, not close enough. I don't think he's going to have the overspeed into turn one. He'll consider it, but just not quite there as they both roll on through. Close racing this for P2 as Perez goes a little bit deep, but he hooks it back together, takes a very late apex to turn two, which you can do if you can get the nose turned in. And as they make their way through the S's now, Takahashi will be in the pain point here because he'll be running in the dirty air of the car in front, and you will lose that front end rotation. These cars don't have too much aerodynamics on them, but what they have when they're running in the dirty air of another car, it will be disrupted, and that means that the car will have more understeer, or you'll just struggle to turn in through the S's compared to the car in front. But to be fair, Duncan Race also having the trouble of running behind John Lauzon as they make the way up towards the Degnas here again. And well, we'll see now Takahashi absolutely throw the car through, although he goes a little bit wide there at Degna 1, and that's actually cost him quite dearly. By comparison, he wouldn't want to be this far back. He's had a really bad run of the Degnas, and well, he needs to be a lot closer than this because right now I think Duncan Race is considering trying to go for the move on Lauzon to get on through as they roll their way through the hairpin once again. Just under 10 minutes of racing to go past the final lap now, and as they make the way up towards Spoon, it is the case that Takahashi just not able to get close enough. He's got the pace to be with Duncan Race, but I don't think right now he's quite got it in the bag in terms of being able to stay that close to look for a move here, such as the Aston Martin's pace versus the BMW. But as they roll on through Spoon Curve, you can see Duncan Race literally using the full limits of that exit curve at turn number 12. Right on the limit there, and I must admit it makes my heart skip a beat every time I see him run onto that exit curve, because I'm thinking to myself, surely he's not going to go that wide again and the car's going to be pulled off circuit. He's just finding a way to keep it there for the time being. But right now I do also feel for John Lauzon, because in his mind he'll be thinking to himself, just leave me alone guys, I've had an eventful enough race as it is. I just want this P3 in the Pro class and the P4 overall, just keep me out of your battle for P2 in the AM class. But of course they'll be saying to him, we'll get a move on then and we won't involve you, as they make their way through Casio Triangle once more. Meanwhile, elsewhere on circuit, I can tell you that Mark Senegal in P10 was passed for what was P9 overall by Jerome Bajulaz, the AM driver, being passed by the pro only a lap ago. But right now this is the closest battle, so we're staying with it until its conclusion, if you don't mind folks, as we do see here that battle for P2 in the AM class will be seemingly going down to the wire, as it's the case. The race goes a bit deep again, but he just hooks the car in at the last possible moment to that apex at turn 2. The man is leaving it as late as possible to make the corner, and he's just about making it, but this time Takahashi is right there, and this is where he needs to be in that BMW. He needs to be literally sniffing the exhaust fumes of that Aston Martin to have the run later on in the lap, as they make the way out of the S's shortly through turn 7, and as they roll them through here, the tyres starting to drop off as well. And this is where, of course, the respective weights of the cars and how much the drivers will abuse the tyres will come into play, as all three of them make their way through the Degnas here, and as they do through Degna 1 into Degna 2, and Duncan Race, of course, has that run through the Degnas compared to his peers around him. But it is the case that with John Lauzon in front, he just cannot seem to find a way to clear the McLaren driver, who's given it his all as well, as they head into the braking zone here for turn number 10. Through the hairpin they go, and Lauzon, I think at this point we're having to think to himself, he's going to have to go defensive if he wants to hold that overall position. Not that he needs to technically, but it may be a little bit of pride on the line as they make the way on around towards Spoon. As we we do briefly jump away from these drivers for a moment, I can tell you that Justin Bragan, meanwhile, has no such qualms or worries in the lead of the AM class here, running rather comfortably in the lead, heading down the back straight right now. You can see the rear of the picture of Rodney Felker there, who is a lap down in P12 overall. That is P7 in the class. And meanwhile, in the battle between our two Pro class leaders, here is Austin Farr, the Goldwing Motorsports driver, who with 5 minutes on the clock still to go, looks to be a dead certain to take the win at this point, albeit without any further mistakes. He sets the fastest lap of the race overall and in class of a 2:11.026, and Edwin Onofre by comparison running in P2 here and staying relatively on the pace of what is Austin Farr, albeit that time around as they both cross the timing line. Austin Farr that fastest lap, and meanwhile Edwin Onofre 0.8 of a second slower. And I think at this point the Ascension Racing driver, if he hasn't already decided, I think he is now saying to himself, just back it off, bring home that P2 as he rolls his way through the opening couple of corners. But as he does, we look back to that battle for P2 in the AM class, and Ray's now a little bit further ahead. He's managed to get the gap open to 1 second as he gets a really nice run. He hooks up turns 1 and 2 there, and as he rolls his way out the corner, this time it is looking as though the Goldwing Motorsports driver now seems to have found that rhythm that was eluding him for the last couple of laps, and he's also got a little bit of clearance to John Lauzon, who seems to have just found a little bit more pace in the car. Although I say that as they make the way through turn number 6 there, Lauzon really having difficulty getting the front end of that McLaren to turn through into corner apex, and that's actually cost him quite a bit of time. And now Duncan Ray's will find himself bunched up behind the McLaren driver again as they roll them through, and as they head down towards the Degners, well, Takahashi not close enough. In fact, Takahashi having a really bad end to that last lap, getting it wrong into Casio, and that gap opened up to 1.1 seconds. It's closing back up briefly now, but it does look as though Takahashi just does not have an answer to the Goldwing Motorsports driver's pace here, as they are running out of time. Not too long to go in this race as they roll their way through the left-hander. Now as they head on through and down towards what is Spoon Curve, it is looking as though Duncan Ray's keeping it nicely together as he rolls his way all the way down towards turns at 12 and 13 as we say hello in the Twitch chat there to Codex and Memory. Hope you're doing well, Codex. But as they come through, we now do look to one driver who has had a race that he probably doesn't want to remember, but still he deserves his day in the spotlight, and that is the Goldwing Motorsports driver Sam Van Olst, who after that contact on lap 1 at 130R, where it's the case it just has not worked out. He tried getting the car through to what was the pit window with the damage, but it was starting to fall away in terms of pace. He had to pit early. He's just finished a second stop, and that is why he's down in P10 overall, P5 in class. And as he rolls his way through the hairpin, it is a day, I think, where he's going to have to just do a little bit of time trying, a little bit of practice in the car, and get a feel for where he can exploit more. Oh, goodness me, and what on earth has happened here? We look away for a brief moment, and that's Fernando Takahashi and also Duncan Ray's, and I think they both had a moment, and there's contact. Oh, goodness me, and well, I think it's the case that we're going to take a look back at what exactly happened a little bit later on, but Duncan Ray's has been given a nudge onto the gravel there, and well, Fernando Takahashi has gone on, but I think there's more to it than just what we saw there as they make the way on through with effectively what is one more lap to go, or it might be one more after this, depending on when Austin Farr comes on through. But Duncan Ray's into the pits, and that means that now, unexpectedly on his debut here, the privateer in the AM class of Stefan Chalafu is now up to P6 overall, and that puts him P3 in the AM class and in sight of a podium. And well, could he hunt down Takahashi at this point? Well, it's an 11.7 second gap. I think it might be the case that's asking a little bit too much, but then again, it can happen, in especially, I should say, get the words out, it is the case that if Takahashi with some damage on the car does have to limp it around and the car falls down, well, it'll be one of those situations whereby I think with that damage, it could fall down, but we will wait and see as the drivers make the way on around, and not too much longer to go in this race as we do look to Austin Farr here, our leader, as he makes his way through Spoon Curve, looking very smooth and hooked up still, and as they make the way down through 13 and in towards what is not Spoon Curve, 130R, looking very firmly in control, no major pressure at this point in time, and as he heads down towards 130R, it is looking very comfortable. Will he have one more lap in the tank? I think there will be one more lap. I think we will get a 20 first and final lap of the Suzuka circuit, and Austin Farr will take us on to that in very short order as he makes his way up towards Casio Triangle. As he comes through the chicane, in this case he will now go on to his final lap of Suzuka. Lap 21, the white flag is out, and it's in Austin Farr's hand here to seal what will be the F1 stage in the Pro Class and gain a huge amount of ground in the Drivers' Championship in the Pro Class. And do keep in mind as well, ladies and gentlemen, that going into tonight, in the absence of Jermaine Warren, who of course was leading by 20 points, it is the case that with Justin Bragan taking the lead here, and we believe he'll be taking the win in the AM class at this rate, there will still be just over 20 points up for grabs for second place, and especially if they've got the fastest lap, if I remember correctly. But even so, I think second place will have just over 20. I think it's somewhere in the region of 21 points, and Fernando Takahashi at this rate could alternatively, and Duncan Race, if he was up there, they could be on course to take that win in the F1 stage off of the AM leader of Jermaine Warren, who's not here tonight, so we won't be able to give you a verdict on who's taken the F1 stage crown in the AM class until round number 4. But right now, Justin Bragan in control here. He won't be thinking about the F1 stage crown. All he'll be thinking about is a win in the bag and some very, very good points here in that BMW M4, which has been looking flawless all evening. He has not put a foot wrong, to be fair, the middle of the pack racing driver, and it is looking all in his control as he makes his way now into the second Degner for the final time. And Sam Van Olst sets his personal best of the race, that there being what is a 2:12.29, and he knows that the end is in sight now. So for him, it's a case of push, 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 and just give it all your best here to wrap up the race and end on a high with some personal best laps, which is something you can do as a sim racing driver, a real world driver, just to give you a little bit of motivation right towards the end when you've had a difficult day. As he comes on through here, we go from one Goldwing Motorsports driver down towards the back of the field to one who's up the head of the field, and he's heading towards the end of this race. And well, Austin Farr having a great start. He was involved in that altercation. Indeed, all of our pro drivers were involved in the altercation, which occurred here at 1:30 so we won't have official confirmation until round number 4 as to whether he's taken the F1 stage crown, but I suspect he will have. But as he makes his way down to the braking zone here for Casio Triangle, beyond that, he's come through the order rapidly, and he's been absolutely flawless since. And as he makes his way out of the final corner, it will be Austin Farr from Goldwing Motorsports who takes the win at Suzuka in round 3 of the GT4 Championship 2022 as he crosses the line there and takes the F1 stage crown in the Pro Class, subject to Stewart's confirmation. But as he comes to the line, we look back to our second place driver who comes to the line, and as Edwin Onofre here, a brilliant second place for the Ascension Racing driver, didn't have the pace to take on Farr, but knew what pace he had and delivered, as behind him, taking P3 overall season on the overall podium and a first place in the AM class, Justin Bragan from middle of the pack racing, won to watching that M4. He has been stellar and looking very in control, as John Lauzon meanwhile comes home P4 overall, P3 in the Pro Class, completed the Pro podium. And it will be Fernando Takahashi, albeit with I think a bit of a steward's investigation regarding his contact with Duncan Race a couple of laps ago, coming home P5 overall, P2 in the AM class. And then Stefan Chalaveau on his debut here at Suzuka brings home a podium in the AM class, and I think he will not quite believe it. I think he'll be asking his pit crew to pinch him when he gets out the car as he comes to the line. Jerome Bajulaz in the end, having started from the pit lane, recovered to P7 overall, P4 in the class. A great drive from the Porsche driver. And then we can see here Mark Senegal going home P8, P4 in the AM class. A good driver recovering from that spin on the opening lap. Then Sam Van Olst coming home P9 there, P5 in the Pro Class, ahead of Duncan Race. And well, he was batting for that second place, and he'll think as though he deserved it. And I think that'll be a very frustrated Goldwing Motorsports driver, but still plenty more rounds to go with Lee Porter here coming down through turn number 17, and the middle of the pack racing driver had a difficult race. He will come across the line, the last of our finishers on the lead lap, P11 overall, P6 in the AM class, and he comes home ahead of Rodney Felker, who finished a lap down P12 at P7 in the AM class, and Henry Morse was the last of our drivers who was not classified at the finish line due to retirement 15 laps ago. Well, before we come to our race results, I think it's only appropriate we take a look back at what exactly happened with regards to Fernando Takahashi and Duncan Moraes. Well, as we do take a look back here, ladies and gentlemen, and it was a brief moment. So it was Duncan Race who had a spin there coming through 130. Oh, goodness me. So it wasn't a case of an altercation between the two of them. It was actually a case that Duncan Race in getting it wrong, and Fernando Takahashi taking evasive action but losing the car in the process, and then coming out of Casio. That's the bump we saw. Well, I do think that bump may be investigated post-race, given the fact that it's not Duncan Race out, but at the same time, I think the contact we thought it would have been it wasn't to be in terms of the two drivers coming together at 130R, so I think that explains the picture a little bit better. Unfortunately, we can't wind it back much further than that, I don't think, but that just puts to bed. So Race having that moment at 130R, losing the rear of the car, and then Takahashi getting caught up in the instant, a little bit of a bump between the two of them, but I definitely think the stewards will be looking over that bump coming out of Casio Triangle, but that's for the stewards to look at, and now we, in the meanwhile, are going to take a look at those race results. So here are the race results, subject to stewards' confirmation, of course. Austin Farr in the end taking the win by 16.2 seconds ahead of Edwin Onofre there in P2. And Austin Farr winning the Pro class and taking home that F1 stage crown in the Pro class as well. And ahead of Edwin Onofre and also ahead of Justin Braggon, who in the end third place overall and the winner in the AM class there, in a brilliant drive of the BMW M4 driver for MOP Racing and one to watch going forward. John Lauzon, P4 there, third place in the Pro class on the Pro podium. Fernando Takahashi, P5 overall, second place in the AM class, with Stefan Chalafu with that unexpected AM podium, P6, third place in the AM class, and then Jerome Bajulaz, P7, ahead of Mark Senegal, Sam Van Olds, and Duncan Ray's P10 there, wrapping up our top 10, and then Lee Porter and Rodney Felker completing the race, P11, P12. And Henry Morse with that early retirement, 16 laps from the finish there, P13 overall. One absolutely a brilliant race, ladies and gentlemen. And as we said, we won't be able to bring you confirmation of the F1 stage winners until at the start of round number 4. So we'll cover that next time. But that means now we have to pack up, wrap up, and get ready to head to our next venue. So with that, thank you very much for watching. And if you did enjoy it tonight and want to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, about joining their series, or just how you can get involved, then why not check out the MPRL Discord, link available there, or the MPRL Twitter, which is a bit more memorable. It's twitter.com/MOP Racing. But now we get ready to make our way to round number 4, but not without a week's break, as we'll be kicking off the America stage in 2 weeks' time. The racing will occur on Wednesday, the 22nd of June, but we'll be bringing you all of the racing action that took place as if it were live on Friday, the 24th of June, 2022. We're moving to Fridays just for today and also for the next round due to a slight scheduling conflict, but then we'll be returning to our standard TV slot on what is Sunday evenings. But it'll be Friday, the 24th of June, 2022, and we kick off a whole new stage, a whole new set of circuits, America's circuits, which are going to be quite a different beast to tackle. And how will our drivers get on in the overall Drivers' Championship, and also how will they kick off their America's Stage Championship campaigns? Only time will tell. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, we at Middle of the Pack Racing League, and also myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, we all wish you the best weekend possible. And remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.